Well, howdy, I'm Mark Dempsey, and we're having, once again, a second cup of coffee conversation with Dr. Deana Steeber, who's the superintendent of Sulphur Springs ISD. I sent you a story recently about, it was from KETK Television in Tyler, but they talked with 4 superintendents around East Texas, including Dr. Marty Crawford with the Tyler ISD, just kind of a state of public education story. And especially looking ahead to the state legislative session that starts in January. And the phrase that stood out in that story to me was lack of state funding. Mm-hmm. And it came up several times in that story. And we've kind of touched on that before, but kind of explain how the public schools are funded by the state. What is the relationship of the state to each individual school district?
Sure. So we're funded based on enrollment and a student allotment. So just for your standard student, $6,150, and that might change somewhat if there's a disability or something like that. But really one of the biggest concerns is that allotment has not changed since 2019. And so that's the only way that school districts, public school districts in Texas that's how we get our funding. And so just looking at inflation and all of that, it makes it really hard to, give cost of living raises and things like that, because, just as everybody has experienced inflation, if you go to the grocery store and things like that, mm-hmm. Our, materials that the school is purchasing, fuel for buses, things like that have gone up as well, but the money coming in hasn't changed. So that's what really complicates things, and we are advocating for the state to fully fund public school.
Mm-hmm. And that funding is in addition to the funding that you generate from property taxes? No,
it is. That funding essentially comes from property taxes.
I see.
Yeah, so that money goes to the state,
and then it
comes back to us. But no, that's not it. That is it. That is our funding.
And of course, years ago there was the whole discussion about, the Robin Hood
Mm-hmm.
Law, or the Robin Hood program, where wealthier school mm-hmm. districts provided funding to less wealthy school districts. So I guess what you're describing is a remnant of that system.
It's based on enrollment, really, irregardless of what your property tax values may be. It's based on a number of student enrollment,
yeah.
And then the state gives you money based on that. It does come from property taxes, that is correct, but the state
mm-hmm.
kind of divvies that out, and so you can't take in more money than students that you have. So some districts have, their property values are much higher
right.
than what the state says it should cost to educate the number of students in their district.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. So, and then at the same time, there's the constant discussion about how can we lower property taxes, and so this is all mixed in together, and it's a complicated and perplexing
School
problem.
Finance is very complicated. There's a lot of moving parts to it, for sure.
Yeah. All right. And another thing, of course, is going to come up in the legislative session is school vouchers, mm-hmm. and I know that that's something you're not excited about or particularly supportive of, but looks like there's a pretty good chance it will pass next year.
That's certainly a possibility. I think the struggle is tying the two together, vouchers and and public school funding. You know, those are two different things. Number one, you know, I feel like, you know, I mean, there's a constitutional obligation to fund Texas public schools. That, you know, we have school choice right now, right? Like you can choose a public school, you can choose a private school, you can choose to homeschool your child. It doesn't mean that it's the taxpayer's responsibility to pay for those choices. But it's, you know, I think that most superintendents would say that, you know, we believe that Texas public schools should be funded appropriately. And, you know, enough so that, you know, we can pay teachers a livable wage and a respectable wage, you know, a wage that they deserve. And it's a hard job. You know, it's a difficult job that they do day in and day out, and it's an important job. And we're hoping that the legislature will treat it as such.
We're almost out of time. It's interesting that the opposition to school vouchers among rural school districts has been the strongest.
Yes.
You know, I don't know why I find that surprising somewhat, but it is true.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It probably is.
And that's
more,
probably
more
not going to change.
opposition.
Probably won't change as the legislative session begins. Well, we are out of time. But there's another thing I want to talk with you about sometime, and there's this proposal to, on some level, teach religion in schools, maybe on a historical basis, and we'll meet again. Sure. We'll have a chance to talk about that.
Okay.
Sometime.
Sounds good.
Sometime in the future. Good. Dr. Deana Steeber is the superintendent of the Sulphur Springs ISD, and I'm John Mark Dempsey. This is KSST.